Let me call to order the Board of Zoning Appeals for April 18th, 2024. At this time, we're going to do a roll call, please.
Ballard.
Here.
Burrell.
Here.
Farrell.
Here.
Our next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes of March 21st, 2024. I'll entertain a motion, please.
I'll move to approve the minutes of March 21st, 2024.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Roll call, please. Yes.
Farrell.
Yes.
Ballard.
Yes.
We have several petitions that are continued to the May 23rd, 2024 meeting. Those petitions are AA-17-22 John Kemp Construction, LLC, and Blackwell Construction, Inc., V-27-22 Cutters Kirkwood 123, LLC, V-0524 Candy Sipes, V-1024 Ruby Creek Homes, and also V-13-24 Ruby Creek Homes as well. And lastly, V-14-24. Our petitions for today are as follows. Andrew Huck is not going to present today, correct? Yes. So one of the petitions have also moved to the next meeting, which is V-08-24, Andrew Huck. So today we're going to hear two petitions. First petition is V-09-24, Hang Tight LLC. And lastly, CU-11-24, Jonathan Brant Badger and Caitlin King. May I have the first petition presentation, please?
Yes, thank you. As mentioned, this is a request from Hang Tight LLC for a property at 2002 West 3rd Street. The petitioners are here tonight to request a variance to allow disturbance within 25 feet of the last closed contour of a karst feature. So the property is zoned mixed-use corridor. To the south of this is land that is also zoned mixed-use corridor, has been developed with an advanced auto parts store. To the west of this, you have a gas station, and then to the east, you have a mix of some single-family houses, but also Culver's Restaurant to the east. To the north, you have a railroad track, and then also land that is owned by the Valhalla Memorial Gardens. So this site was previously developed with two buildings that were used by master rental. Those two buildings have been removed, and the petitioner is moving forward with a possible site plan approval to redevelop the site. However, there is a karst feature on the property to the south of this, on the south side of 3rd Street, that contains a karst feature that is on the south side that, by virtue of the last closed contours, places a good portion of this site within what is known as the last closed contour that defines a karst feature and would prohibit any development. So this site to the south that contains the karst feature has implications for this property. And so the property to the south came forward in 2004 for variance approval to allow for that property to be redeveloped. As part of the approval and that variance process, the adjacent property and the owner went through an extensive geologic study on the site that looked to more accurately define the karst feature and what should be protected. As part of that variance, the Board of Zoning Appeals made findings that the 838 contour signified the actual sensitive karst feature area, and then also placed some limitations on that site to allow limited disturbance between the 838 contour and the 841 contour. Outside of the 841 contour, there were no restrictions whatsoever that were placed, and so the property was able to be developed to the south. But as I mentioned, that karst feature and those restrictions would carry forward implications for this particular property and would place a large amount of this property out of possible development due to where that last closed contour falls. So the petitioner is proposing to redevelop this site, but first must receive a variance from the karst disturbance prohibitions within the Unified Development Ordinance. And so that is what they are here tonight seeking. So with that, as always, we are making findings for the 3 criteria that are outlined in staff's report. We did not find that the approval would be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare. The previous karst feature or the karst study analyzed this karst feature and the sensitive areas of that and what needed to be protected and what did not need to be protected. It set those areas aside. You know, this site has had previous development on it with the master rental buildings and parking area with no known impacts or implications from the karst feature, as well as 3rd Street is located within this karst, the last closed contour, and have not been any implications from that, as well as the widening and other features and improvements within the karst feature area, within the contours areas, I should say. So we do not find there will be any impacts to the public health, safety, or general welfare. We did not find any impacts on the use and value of the area as a result of the variance. And then, as I mentioned, the peculiar conditions that surround this and the practical difficulties are the large size of the last closed contour and the substantial amount of the property that would not be allowed to be developed if the strict application of the terms of the UDO were applied to this. You know, as I mentioned, the karst study that was done on the adjacent property significantly reduced the area that needed to be protected. So without the granting of this variance, this property would be severely encumbered and not be able to be developed. And so we did make findings for that. And we are recommending that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the proposed findings and approve this variance request. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Eric. Now we're going to go and hear from the petitioner. If there's a petitioner for this in chambers, if they want to come forward, please.
Alex Rosenberg is online, and he is the petitioner's representative.
Okay. I'm going to have to swear you in, so you just state your name. Aaron Steele. Aaron, would you, do you affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You have up to 20 minutes.
Yes, my name is Aaron Steele. I'm a member of Hang Tight LLC seeking this variance. This variance is to allow disturbance within 25 feet of the last closed corridor of a karst feature for a property in the mixed-use corridor zoning district. This property address is 2002 through 2010 West 3rd Street, what was formerly Master Rental.
Have anything else to add other than what the staff has reported?
No.
And you can save your time. We'll go to questions, and then you can come back if
Okay,
we have more
thank you.
questions. Okay, thank you. So right now, any questions from the board?
Just a quick question, Eric. I think there's an actual sinkhole located on this site. Does that have any concern in terms of how that could spread potentially in the future?
We did not identify any sinkholes actually on the petition site. You know, as I mentioned, there is a swallow hole that is on the property to the south of this that was identified, but there have not been any actual sinkholes located on this petition site.
Thank you.
Any questions for staff or the petitioner?
I don't have any questions.
So at this time, we go to the public. If there's anybody, is the petitioner online? Did they want to speak? They have time.
If you would like to speak more for your petitioner time.
Sure, thank you. No, we're just here available to answer any questions.
Thank you. So at this time, we open discussion to the public, please. If there's anybody in chambers or online, now is your time to step forward and ask questions or give your statement.
Raise your virtual hand or send a message to the meeting host.
No. Okay. So at this time, if we don't have any discussions, I will entertain a motion from the board, please.
I'll make a motion to adopt the proposed findings and approve V-09-24.
Roll call, please.
Farrell,
Yes.
Ballard,
Yes.
Burrell.
Yes. Your motion's been granted. Thank you. So we'll have the next petitions report, please.
Katie Gandhi. Just a second, sorry. Okay, this petition is for 815 South Grant, located in central Bloomington, just west of Bryan Park. The zoning for this property is R3 residential small lot, and it is surrounded on all sides, adjacent with other R3 lots. 815 South Grant is approximately 0.32 acres, and it's currently developed with a home, single-family home, and the current use is single-family. The petitioner is proposing to is seeking conditional use approval for a home occupation. So they are proposing to use 2 existing bedrooms in the property at 815 South Grant as a home office space for Katie. The business would provide individual consultation, certification to licensed therapists. The proposal states that visitors will park on the property on the owner's driveway, and that that both the operator and the other non-residential employee will not require parking at the property. The property is adjacent to the owner's second residence, and the owner and her spouse will be residing at both connected properties 12 months out of the year with their 4 children and retired grandparents. Both properties are approximately 1,500 square feet. No new remodel, structural, or aesthetic alteration to the residential home is required as part of this proposal. The home occupation will be conducted in approximately 30% of the home. 1 non-resident staff member will be part of this home occupation. And 1 to 2 client visits will take place each hour between 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. So just as a refresher, Title 20 of the Bloomington Municipal Code defines a home occupation as an activity or occupation carried on within a dwelling or approved residential accessory structure by members of the family in the dwelling, and where the use of the home as an occupation is incidental and subordinate to the use of the home as a dwelling. A home occupation use is also an accessory use to a home, which is defined by an activity conducted on the same zoning lot as the primary building. It's clearly and customarily incidental to and subordinate to, in purpose to, and serving the primary use. And it's either in the same ownership as the primary use or is operated and maintained solely for the comfort of the occupants and the customers. So in response to this, to the notifications about this petition, staff received 6 phone calls and emails from unique neighbors. A couple were neutral, 4 expressed objection, and 3 of those 4 submitted letters that were in the packet. Staff received 2 additional phone calls objecting the proposal this week after the packet was published to the city website last week. So in response to the criteria, both the general approval criteria and the conditional use criteria that staff used to assess this proposal, some of the supportive findings include that it will not result in natural, scenic, or historic damage, adequate public service capacity exists. The property is located fairly close to a major arterial road, and there's vehicle access to the property. While there is no pedestrian access to this property, due to the streets and traffic calming, the streets are walkable for pedestrians. Additional supportive findings include that it supports local entrepreneurship and access to mental health services. It also provides a service in walking distance of many homes and potential clients, which supports increased walkability. The petition is using an existing building with existing services that comply, as far as we're aware. Some of the non-supportive findings include that the proposal could have impacts to the residential character of the neighborhood, both because it's unclear that whether or not the primary use of the site is non-residential or in fact residential. The petitioner is saying they will live on the property and they will not park there, although there doesn't seem to be space for both the business traffic and personal home traffic. While there is on-street parking available on Grant Street is only wide enough for 2 cars at a time, generally. There are limited sidewalks in the neighborhood, so pedestrians must often share the road with cars. Increased traffic to this home business may reduce safety for pedestrians and local children. Some nuisance related to vibrations, lighting of cars visiting the site will occur. The proposal doesn't support some of the goals of the comprehensive plan related to finding affordable single-family housing for families, as it seems to propose the conversion of a residence to a business in a residential area. If 2 therapists work at this home business, 1 to 2 visitors an hour are proposed to park on the driveway. 4 spaces are needed for turnover, and they will be stacked 2 in the driveway, so it's unclear how the driveway alone can facilitate turnover for the business. Visitors to a typical reference are hard to quantify, but with an increase of about at least 16 visitors a day, 5+ days per week, is not typically within residential character. And because the petitioner will live in both this property and another, it's not clear that they comply with home occupation use-specific standards that require the operator residency be within the same dwelling as that of the home occupation. The intention behind the home occupation in the code is that residents utilize their residences to run a small business that are not the primary use of the property. And an individual cannot have two buildings on different properties with different addresses as their primary residence. And it's unclear whether or not this particular property will serve as the primary use of this particular property will be a dwelling unit, or whether it will be a business use. Another thought is that there are many therapists in town who are unwilling or unable to pay high office costs and would love to conduct in-person therapy in their home. At this time, we have strict home occupation standards that limit, the merging of businesses and residential areas. And perhaps one day that will change, but at the moment, we keep them separate, and perhaps once one is permitted to do it, many more will be asking, which could produce more strain on housing. So the department recommends that Board of Zoning Appeals adopt our findings and deny the requested conditional use approval.
Thank you. At this time, we'll hear from the petitioner. If the petitioner is in chambers, please approach the podium. Please state your name, and I'll swear you in, please.
Caitlin King.
Caitlin, do you affirm or swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And I can swear you in as well.
Jonathan Badger.
Jonathan, do you affirm or swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Go on.
This is my husband, Brant. He has laryngitis, so he's got a, if he has anything to add, he'll be writing things down. So thanks everyone for attending. My name is Katie, and this is my husband, Brant. We're excited to share plans for moving our family into a new home and requesting a permit for an allowed use home occupation. So we have lived on one end of Dodds or the other for 18 years because we treasure our relationship with the culture and the other families in the neighborhood. Our family and children have grown up with the other families and kids in this neighborhood for 14 years. Our kids attend Templeton Elementary and the Project School, walking with other children and families to school every day. We spend our summers walking to the library and Bryan Park Pool. We are raising our 4 kids here for many more years, so we have a long-term stake in caring for the neighborhood and being good stewards of it. Our intent tonight is to clarify for everyone that our current proposal is fully aligned with the code that governs property use and the intent behind the code. We've been talking to the zoning office with multiple questions. Thank you, Katie. Probably driven her a little crazy. An idea since February when we first began looking for houses with yards and garages, figuring out how to move my mom in, as well as brainstorming possibilities for me to work from home more permanently. I currently work and rent 1 day a week in a rented office downtown, with my other work being remote. It is true that I am in the process of expanding my practice to be able to support other helpers and healers and help them continue serving our community. I also have an invisible illness called lupus. So to look at me, I look perfectly healthy. But what chronic autoimmune disorders do is make everything more challenging and more confusing, and each day ends up being a mystery. Will I feel energized today? Will I feel sore? Will I be able to get out of bed? Will I barely be able to walk or hold my eyes open? Part of this request is to allow me to continue to work, but with the comforts and amenities working from home can offer with unpredictable illnesses and symptoms. In this process of dreaming and brainstorming, we have also been talking to neighbors about our ideas as well. Unfortunately, I think this has led to some confusion about our intent to follow the code and fears of what a home occupation actually means. We are not zoning experts, and we've learned a lot over the last 10 weeks of exploration. We are now clear on the guidelines of a home occupation and would like to take this time to clarify what my business is and our intentions for our home. So the petition filed is for a home occupation that meets all UDO guidelines. Our family will relocate around the block to 815 South Grant to make it our primary residence, where myself and one employee will be using 30% or less of the space during the day while the kids are at school. We're going to use our current Dodds house as an accessory living space to take care of my aging mom. As you can see in the report, the main concerns highlighted were operator residency and impacts to residential character, off-street parking and loading, and nuisance related to noise, smoke, odors, vibrations, lighting, hours of operation. And I'd also like to directly address the information that has been submitted to the board regarding our situation. Currently, my business is a one-woman operation. It's just me. I am a licensed clinical social worker that specializes in attachment-related work, such as supporting pregnant and birthing folks and helping improve parent-child relationships. Half of my job is direct client care. The other half is supporting other professionals through consultation and supervision. I have an alphabet soup of credentials, but one main thing that I do is I'm an IMDRIA-approved consultant, so I provide consultation to other therapists to help develop their skills further. I've also been working in social services in Bloomington for over 16 years. Recently, I have been dreaming of starting a group practice to support other professionals. And to clarify, a group practice is when more than one therapist works together as part of the same business. This can be virtual or in person. And this is different from offering group therapy or running a group home, which I am not doing nor am I qualified to do. Regarding safety concerns, if it was dangerous to be around people going to therapy, it would not be safe to be in public. Since 2020, about 30% of American adults have seen a therapist. In 2021, 42 million people received counseling for their mental health in the U.S. Every year, about 20% of working adults experience a mental health issue, such as depression and anxiety. Additionally, I would not and will not be welcoming any dangerous individuals into my home where my children live. I primarily support parents and other helping professionals. I do not specialize in severe mental illness, addiction, crisis services, or work with clients who need inpatient hospitalization or residential support. Regarding traffic and parking, there's a question in the staff report regarding needing 4 parking spaces instead of 2. In my practice, appointments are scheduled 10 or 15 minutes apart, which prevents clients from arriving and leaving at the same time. The current operating hours do range from 9 to 7, depending on the day, as stated in the petition. The UDO allows home occupation hours between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Clients will not be scheduled 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. As a mental health professional, I would urge anyone to not work 10 hours a day and 7 days a week. 9 to 7 is just the range of operating hours of my business, but typically I see 4 clients in a day, usually a mixture of in-person and virtual. Regarding noise, we took this really seriously because we live here and we experience noise in the neighborhood. We walked past many little 5 parties on our way here tonight. So the noise created by people visiting our home, whether it is personal or professional, will be negligible in the context of normal residential activities. We want to be realistic about the amount of noise, the comings and goings a therapy practice would require. With curiosity, we researched noise levels to determine if this would be a challenge for our neighborhood. And I'm going to outline some of our findings. We do tend to just kind of like nerd out when there's a scientific thing going on, so just pardon our special interest on decibels for a moment. Beautiful outdoor concerts in Bryan Park that we can hear from our home, but we love to attend with our family. None of this is complaining, just simply fact. So those Bryan Park concerts that are outside are about 100 decibels. Lawnmowers are 110 decibels. Our dogs barking are 90 decibels. Our children playing outside, 80 decibels. A noisy outdoor party, 100 decibels. And a cardinal singing in the tree above you, priceless, but it's 60 decibels. In comparison, the additional noise added by the therapy practice would be a car engine starting in our driveway, which we actually did this from 100 feet away, which would be about how far our neighbors are, 43 decibels. A car door opening in our driveway from 100 feet away, 41 decibels. And a car door shutting in our driveway from 100 feet away, 47 decibels. So for context, common 45 decibel sounds include libraries, gentle rain, and a refrigerator humming. The privacy fencing we've also included in there should reduce the volume even further. There are some suggestions that we do not intend to honor the guidelines of having one non-resident employee. As I shared above, we felt it was kind to include neighbors in early brainstorming while becoming familiar with the applicable codes. It has been our intention since the beginning to learn what is allowed so we can honor our responsibility to apply for the needed permits. I know you don't know us, but we are not rule breakers. We are quite boring and have a healthy fear of consequences. Me too. Our current request is within the code for myself and one non-resident employee to operate out of our home. I don't currently have any employees. This is future planning. If I grow to more than one employee needed on site, I'll rent another office space, but that is not my current need or situation. Concerns of setting a precedent. Several neighbors in the staff report have expressed concern that applying for this permit somehow changes the rules of what is allowed in the neighborhood. We want to again reiterate, we are not asking for any exceptions or variances to existing rules. Regarding operator residency and residential character, the intent of the code allowing home occupation is for the home to be used primarily as a residence. We have communicated our intention and have filed the homestead exemption at the auditor's office. Ownership transfers to us tomorrow morning. Our proposed home occupation at 815 South Grant meets this criteria. The proposed use will not detract from the residential character of the property. It will not have detrimental effects on the surrounding properties. In fact, our use of the property will serve to protect the residential character of the neighborhood much more than other uses. For example, there are 6 rental properties on our block that frequently host nighttime parties, elicit noise complaints, and have more than 4 cars parked on the street at any given time, including in our neighbors' yards. These parties include loud music, barely dressed people coming in and out, front yard beer pong tournaments, playing football across the street from each other, and tons of litter like glass in the street. A ritual, this is a true story, a ritual our children created is the day or the weekend after Halloween, we take trash bags and recycling bins down to Wiley Street to clean up the glass, cans, cigarette butts, and other trash left behind from these parties. From a mental health perspective, the party culture promotes harm to women, who I primarily serve, who then come to my office for healing and support. The number of women, including IU students, that I see for rape and sexual assault services would shock everyone. And please do not misunderstand us. We love our neighborhood. We willingly and lovingly share this neighborhood with people of all ages and walks of life. We waited for our forever neighborhood home, really seeking out Dodd Street specifically and now Grant Street. We love our neighborhood and living in Bloomington. I attended IU and understand and know the developmental stages of college students well, and then I just never left. I stayed here forever after attending IU. We share this information to demonstrate the reality of whether our proposal will negatively impact the residential character of the neighborhood. Based on this information and our lived experience, our proposal will protect the culture and continue to attract families to the area to live more permanently. So in conclusion, we're not requesting variances or exceptions to any city guidelines. We are simply honoring our responsibility to let the city know our plan for our home. We hope this information has helped clarify for the board and others that our petition for this home occupation is aligned with the existing code and the intent behind the code. We are committed to maintaining the safety and character of our neighborhood, which we value highly and where we plan to live for many more years. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. You will have a little more time to come back if you need to, okay, if we have questions. Thank you so much. Any questions from the board at this point, either to staff or the petitioner?
To the petitioner, you said you're in the process of closing on 815 South Grant?
It's tomorrow morning.
You close tomorrow morning? Okay. Which property, so you're going to be living in 815 South Grant?
Yes,
As
after
your-
June, when we take possession.
As your primary residence?
Yes.
Okay. That's it for now. Just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
Any questions, Nikki?
How many therapists did you say right now? It's just you, but you also mentioned that you're growing and expanding. I wasn't sure if you meant growing and expanding like your personal business or like trying to open a practice as a whole.
That's a good question. I'm trying to open a practice as a whole. Right now, it's mostly virtual, but the home occupation would allow one other, like an assistant or one other therapist, to be working with me.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question for staff. So just trying to understand the discrepancy of, there are two homes. They own one home, and the home that they own is 508 East Dodds, about 2,000 square feet. And they're buying a 1,000 square foot home and moving a family of 4 to 815 South Grant. And when you sign up for the petition, do they have to describe the type of business that they're gonna do for a home occupation? So does what she's saying here today reflects what she wrote in the petition?
The proposal was that they would live in the home on Dodd Street, expand their living spaces into 815 South Grant, and then do the home occupation at 815 South Grant. I was notified yesterday that they've decided to now move their family into 815 South Grant and do the home occupation at 815 South Grant. That's why there is a discrepancy.
Okay, well, that's what I'm trying to figure out, because it seems like the petition says one thing, but they are saying another thing here today.
Jackie Scanlon, Development Services Manager, and Ms. Gandhi can correct me if I'm wrong, but also I believe initially, part of why this is confusing for us and hard to relate to you, is initially they said they were only going to live in the house on Grant 3 months out of the year. So we said, well, that's not, a home occ is supposed to be accessory to you living there. And so the information that we have subsequently gotten from them, apparently up until yesterday, has been changing about how they're going to be using that house. So I think that's part of why we haven't felt confident that we can establish that this is even their residence and then have the conversation about the home occupation.
So you think this is a premature, I don't want to get to a point that they get denied and
Right.
then they don't have an opportunity to come back in front of us again. Do you think this is a premature petition?
So right, they don't live there, they don't even own it, but are closing tomorrow, right? So I think if you were to want to approve it, I think we would have to craft conditions related to, what do you want in place signifying that they do in fact live there, like the homestead exemption, and then after that, can they run a home occupation there? That's what we had kind of discussed internally. Or if you, once you hear everything and make your decision, if you make a decision in favor of what they're requesting, that we do think it's important to establish that, first they need to establish that they actually live there.
Yeah.
And then that based on that, they meet all of the requirements because they meet, if you think that they meet the other requirements as well.
Well, and it's kind of a costly, and I'm sorry, I can't help myself to think as my profession. So you have a bigger home where you're going to take the homestead off the big home, go to a smaller home. So you're going to pay more real estate taxes on a bigger home to live in a little home? It's just the way my brain thinks, so I'm sorry. Yes.
I've never done one of these before. The difference between the homes are 200 square feet. So our current home is 1,200 square feet, and the other one's 1,000, but the other home has a fenced-in backyard and a garage, which we do not have at our current home. So it's been kind of complicated as my mom retires and ages. We're trying to, it is a change for all of us, trying to figure it out. And a couple of years ago, we cared for my dad as he passed, and we realized, like, oh my gosh, we gotta figure something out. And so what that all has meant is like, oh, okay, this is gonna require some flexibility in figuring out our future plans. And it's very possible for us to live in South Grant. It's actually more updated. It has a bigger yard. So there's a lot of benefits for us moving next door.
Is it possible, or is it what you intend to do?
Oh, it's what we intend to do now. We did have to talk to my mom about it for a while because she's going to be moving here soon. But yeah, that's our intention. We take possession in June.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the decision to change that plan came after submitting the petition and hearing the clarification that living there for part of the year would not satisfy the conditions for a home occupation. So that's when we said, well, then okay, let's live there for all of the year. And that way, that will satisfy the conditions for home occupation.
Thank you. Do you have any more questions?
Just a question then to staff. If this is the clarification the petitioner is giving, how would that change your findings? And would it be a denial? Because to me, this is significant shift into saying they're going to be there 100% of the time, guaranteed, so therefore it would fall under home occupation use. So just to clarify that.
I'm not sure, because it is still a non-traditional request. People don't typically have two homes right next to each other that they intend to live in most of the time. Perhaps having proof that somebody else is going to live in the other one could help. I know that they have dreams for more therapists. I know the initial request that first came to me was for 3 to 4 therapists, but once I communicated that the limit was 1 non-resident employee as part of the home occupation requirements, they've decided to start smaller. And so it's hard for me to say at this point whether or not it could be an approval. Weighing that against some of the other factors, traffic, the size of the streets, the response of the neighbors, I'm not sure, to be honest, what I would do.
Any more questions? Nikki?
Could you provide additional documentation that someone else is taking over the bills at 408? And like I assume, what's going on with 408 now that you're switching to a different location?
Will stay the same. And so for whichever parts of the year Nana comes to stay with us, or if she comes here permanently, either way, it's still just going to be our accessory living space, money that we would have spent on a bigger home in a different neighborhood, but we're not going to move because we love our neighborhood, and money that we would have spent existing our current living space, but the financial and geographic limitations don't allow for that. And so when we learned that our next door neighbor was selling her house, we said, wow, this is a dream come true. Would you consider selling it to us? And she said, yeah, that's a great idea.
Thank you.
Clarification, because now it's been said twice. It's not, as far as code is concerned, it's not an accessory residence. They're 2 homes on completely different lots. They happen to adjoin. So they may use it in that way, but it's not the way that we think about accessory dwelling unit, and that those are on one lot and that they're linked because they're on one property. These are 2 completely different properties. They could sell either one at any time. And I'm not sure that's, I just want to clarify that we don't see it as an accessory. It's its own house. And one of the things that I think was in the packet and was mentioned also was like the privacy fence. that won't, it's not like a little compound. Like they're gonna have to meet all the fencing regulations for each property separately, meaning like height limits. You know, they're not going to be able to put up an 8-foot fence all the way between the property on Grant and the neighbor, you know, to cut off the neighbor on the corner on both sides. They'll be able to do that on part of it, but in front of the building walls, it's gonna be 4 feet like it is for any other property, because these are just 2 single-family properties, and that's how the code sees them. So, I mean, I think I just want to clarify that because it's kind of come up a couple times.
Thank you, Jackie. You have a question, Nikki?
All of that.
Turn there. More questions? Yeah.
Just a quick one so we can get to the public for comment. If approval was given, could a condition be that they have to show the homestead exemption is applied to 815 South Grant? Because obviously, if you guys sell the place, it has to carry forward, because once it's approved, then the next person can do it. So would that be, in staff's opinion, would that be substantial as needed proof to show that they're using it 100% as their primary residence? Because you obviously can't have 2 homestead exemptions.
That is what we stated in the staff report, so yes.
Exemption is on file. Oh, so sorry.
You can only approach the bench when you are asked.
So sorry.
No problem. No. At this time, we're going to open, since there are no more questions from the board, we're going to open to the public. And if you could sign in and state your name, and I'll swear you in before you start speaking, please, okay?
Good evening. My name is Scott O'Brien. I live at 712 South Grant Street.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, we have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I live on South Grant. I'm 4 houses away. Dodds runs, it's across one street, but it's 4 houses. Katie and Brant's family is a very nice family. And I support the work that they do in mental health in a variety of ways. I'm also a strong advocate for mental health care and access. So none of that is the issue, and as Brant and I have discussed, none of this is personal. But some of the questions that the board has asked and some of the discussion you've had with staff gets to the first point I'd like to make, which is just the question of residency is extremely murky. And even before they put the offer in on 815 South Grant, they were considering buying the house that's literally right next to my house. I'm at 712, I think that's 715 South Grant. The old gentleman there just passed away. His sons are getting ready to sell that home. And they approached me and asked me about the prospect of their moving in therapists into that home. This was several months ago, before the opportunity came up at 815. And they asked me, as in a neighborly way out on the street, would I have an issue with that? And I said, yeah, I would not be happy. At that time, they mentioned 3 to 5 therapists was a plan. They wanted to expand a therapy practice. I immediately said, well, you would have to be resident in the house. I do know the rules. I've lived in Bloomington over 20 years, and I've been a part of the Bryant Park neighborhood for a very long time. I've just returned myself 2 years ago, and I'm very happy to have spent the money, and it was a lot of money to move back into the city. When I asked them that, they said, well, the residency issue is ambiguous. That was the phrase they used to me, and I was troubled by that. They also at that time told me that they had already received permission from the city to do this. So there's issues about communication and what really is the intent here, and frankly, the story has shifted a lot. Okay, they didn't buy the house next to me. The sons of the man who passed away are not quite ready to sell it. And then 815 came up. I don't understand how the city can have a rule about residency and then a family say, well, we're between 2 different houses, but they're adjacent, so it's okay. What if the next petitioner came and said, well, we're only a block away. We have 2 places and they're a block away. And then the one after that said, well, we're just on the other side of Bryant Park. It's still close enough to walk. It seems to me a pretty clear-cut case. You live in a home like I do, and you work out of that home or you don't. I understand that there's a rule that you can do that if you're resident in the property. I note that this evening they're using phrases like auxiliary residence. In the petition, the phrase used was second residence, and they describe the place they live in now on Dodds as their second residence. If you look at the petition, it's on the first sheet. So that's precisely getting to the question that Mr. Ballard, I think, is getting at, is how many residences can you have? When I said you have to move in, I said, are you going to move into this house? Actually, when they first approached me, I was thrilled. It's a nice family. I would love a family to move in to the block. There's 2 other families right next to me, just further down on the street. But they said that no, they weren't intending to move. Now, I realize that was a slightly earlier discussion about a different property, but I think the trust level is low, and I think other neighbors are here to speak for themselves about the question of residency. Relatedly, as I've already sort of alluded to, the question of how many therapists is really in the plan, because that story has changed as well. I got a note on my door from them that seemed to imply Katie, a second person who would also see clients, so that's 2 therapists, and maybe Brant. That was my understanding from the note I got on my door earlier last week. So this is a concern. I just spent a lot of money on a house to move into that neighborhood. I don't want businesses there. There are properties down on South Grant you can rent. And my concern is about the traffic. I don't think I'm not worried about dangerous people. I take your points. I don't think that's an issue in mental health care in general. But the amount of traffic is a concern. The idea that 2 therapists or 3 or maybe an expanding number seems pretty inappropriate. The block off of Dodds that I'm on is a very narrow block. It's actually the only one in the neighborhood that has curbs, which is a good thing, but it makes it very narrow. And there are 2 other families with very small kids that play around in those yards. That's my primary concern, is the traffic, the precedent, and the issue of residency. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jan Sorby, and I've lived
Excuse me, Jan, I need to swear you in.
That's right.
Yes. Do you affirm or swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I live in Bryant Park also, and I've lived there for 38 years. So I have quite a history with the neighborhood, and I want to say something similar has happened to this before. And there was a daycare that was a bona fide home daycare, which was fabulous for the neighborhood. But they had dreams and hopes of making it bigger, so they bought the second property right next door. And because of the traffic and the fumes and the noise, et cetera, this petitioner had to come to BZA. And in doing so, they said, well, we can put one of our employees there to live part-time. And it didn't fly, because we know the intent of a home business is to be secondary to the living situation. I myself have been a graphic designer until I retired, and I operated a home business that was secondary to our living for many years. I had no traffic, I had no clients, I always went to them. So I think that this is a very similar situation where someone starts out as a home business, but the daycare was actually in the woman's home. Then they bought the second one right next door, very similar, because they too had aspirations of a larger business. And then they had many employees, like they had 3 employees coming in. And so I think, and that was readily denied, because in the UDO it says that the R3 district is intended to protect and enhance the established residential neighborhood. by increasing the viability of home ownership and affordable dwelling units through small lot subdivisions, accessory dwelling units, and property improvement compatible with surrounding development patterns. And this is not going to be an accessory dwelling unit. We know what an ADU is. Then the big one that really strikes me, and I think is really the key issue here, the conversion of existing housing stock to a more intense land use should be discouraged. And these people seem like lovely people. I know many of their friends, we share friends, and I'm very, very distressed that they're closing tomorrow because neighbors did say you've got to go to the city on this, before, weeks and weeks ago. And the daycare came to the city only after buying the second property and making changes to the second property. And so I'm very distressed to hear this because we should be looking at home businesses in the true sense and in their intent of what it is. There are also live-work properties at the Lockleys development in Henderson and Hillside that they could buy into in terms of renting and, maybe having one of their employees stay there, or not, just have it as a business. They'd have a storefront facing Hillside or Henderson, and it would be a perfect walk-in situation. I just briefly want to say I'm very, very concerned about affordable housing in our city. I'm very concerned about the loss. Bryan Park gets hit up for these kinds of things often. And I think it's because we have relatively more affordable housing than any place else in the city. So I just want you to consider the intent of what a home office is, the intent of somebody's dream to expand more, and kind of the murkiness of, and I understand they might not know right now exactly what they want in the future, but is that worth getting rid of an affordable single housing that we need so desperately in this city? And in the paper I just read today or yesterday that a couple dozen more single-family houses are going to be raised. So, please consider that. Thank you.
Hi, my name is John Lawrence.
Hi, John. Do you affirm or swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I'll keep this short, sort of to piggyback on what Jan was just saying, that we have a housing shortage in Bloomington. And as many apartments as are popping up as we see everywhere, we're not making very many small single-family homes. They're an endangered species in this town. And from what I gather, it's probably one of the biggest needs we have, and it's one of the reasons why we have the zoning rules that we do that keep single-family homes in one area and zone businesses to exist other places. I understand the desire to do a single-family home for a business because, frankly, it's cheaper. Commercial property is a little expensive, but we have created those situations for obvious reasons. We want to keep businesses in certain areas. And if you open this door, you just, I can imagine a floodgate of businesses going, hey, I can go into the neighborhoods and create a business. And I just think that that's a dangerous precedent. So please protect our single-family homes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Marcus Moyer.
Do you affirm or swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'm a neighbor, and first thing I'd like to say... Oh, sorry about that. I live right across the street from them. The first thing I want to say to them directly is, you are nice people. This is not personal. But I don't support their proposal. The issues that Scott raised I completely agree with. The traffic would be, I would describe it as probably a nightmare. From 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., that many clients coming in on that street. There are no sidewalks on that street. It would be very problematic. Also, I don't really know if the residency requirement would be met. I think that's a valid concern. That's about it.
Can you state your name, please, for the record?
My name is Christy Pop.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You have up to 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So I live on Grant Street. I live at 708, which is just next door to Scott, who spoke earlier. I'm 5 doors down from the house in question and about a half a block away. I have lived in the Bryant Park neighborhood for 19 years, and this is my second house that I've owned in the neighborhood. I've lived here for 12 years. I am a lawyer. I work primarily remotely from my home, and I have a family of 5. And even though we are completely bursting at the seams of our tiny house, we've decided to continue to stay in the neighborhood for reasons I'll explain in a second. I know Brant and Katie. I think they're wonderful, compassionate people. They're very good neighbors. But for the reasons I want to explain, I really oppose this request from them. What I wrote up, I based on their petition and also a letter that they attached to my door. So the story has changed a little bit as to what their intentions are. However, I still want to say that I think it's really implausible what they're proposing. They're proposing now that they're going to leave a 1,200 square foot house to live in a 1,000 square foot house with 6 people. 300 square feet of that house is going to be turned over to a therapy office, leaving 700 square feet of house for 6 people. Now, my family, we're 5 in 900 square feet. And I can tell you that that is very tight. I can't imagine one more person in 200 fewer square feet. Not only, I just don't see that this is happening. That also, I find the story about mom moving in a little hypothetical, a little too hypothetical to justify this request. First, grandma was going to come in maybe someday in the future. Now she might be there soon, or she might be there part-time. But I still don't see how this is going to work, them living in 2 non-contiguous addresses. I think the zoning restrictions, they were passed as part of a democratic process after debate, and they were passed for a reason. I hope that you look at that reason for why we want to keep the neighborhood the way it is. I do think that there is a slippery slope in granting these kinds of variances. But the second reason that I oppose this is really personal. As I mentioned, we've stayed in the neighborhood despite our house bursting at the seams. We have a very quiet street on Grant Street. The streets in the whole neighborhood are quiet, but particularly on Grant Street. And this allows our children the freedom to run around the neighborhood. Our children are constantly playing pickup ball in the street. They're going across the street to our neighbor's house to play with their friends. And they walk up Grant Street so that they can get to Allen Street and go to Bryant Park, or to go down to Davis Street to play in the creek. They are always using Grant Street as their mode of walking through the neighborhood. And the reason is because it's a narrow road and there's very little traffic. We do not have sidewalks in our neighborhood. Pedestrians and children have to walk in the streets. Now, the proposal is from 9 to 7, Monday through Friday, that they may be having people come in for therapy. It's unclear how many people at any time, but the proposal is 1 to 2 people an hour. So that's 10 to 20 cars an hour down this really tiny street. I think that this is too much. It's going to make walking dangerous for my children, for other children, and everyone in the neighborhood. Many of the additional cars will also be driving down our part of the block to enter and exit into the neighborhood, as people typically do. So I just think that that is unsafe. Businesses like this bring traffic, and that's why they're not allowed. So I request that you deny this request from them. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Kim Van.
Do you affirm or swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You have up to 5 minutes. Thank you.
I just am concerned if this proposal would pass, it will affect generations of your family, your family, your family, everybody in this room. It will affect every generation. Home-based business occupation definition as we know it would cease to exist. What if somebody wants to buy the house next to Brant and Katie, turn it into a massage therapy-based business? They don't have to live there. They live down the street. Maybe it's a therapy massage, maybe it's something else. But the point is, once we destroy that definition, our children won't be able to live in Bryant Park anymore. Our children may not be able to live in any residential neighborhood anymore. Once that's changed, that's changed. And I really hate to think 5 generations from now, we won't have residents anymore. That could really happen. So I'm begging to think about this, look at it again, look at it again. It may not be what it seems. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in chambers to make a statement? Do we have anybody online?
There are 3. Katie Miller, if you'd like to go ahead and unmute, and
I'll swear her in.
Flavia will swear you in.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. May you state your name,
great.
please?
Katie Cott Miller.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You have up to 5 minutes.
Okay, great. So I'm Katie Cott Miller. I live on 707 South Grant Street, across the street from Christy and Scott, so also about a half block away. Again, Katie and Brant are lovely people. I'm a clinical psychologist in private practice, so I support Katie's work in mental health. So this is not personal, and I oppose this request. I echo with all the concerns that have already been expressed. I have 2 small children, and as Christy was saying, there's, our 2 sets of kids are playing a lot on Grant. It's a narrow street, it's quiet, it's a beautiful place for kids to be outside and playing. I'm very concerned about the increased traffic. I'm very concerned about safety regarding that. Up to 20 cars going back and forth a day during daytime hours, increased traffic from college parties that's often happening once my kids are in bed. It's happening at night. It's typically kept to Thursday through Saturday nights. And this would increase traffic during the day and afternoon when everyone's outside, like playing, walking, biking. So I'm concerned about that, the safety piece. The second concern I have is about the equity of using affordable housing in an urban, walkable neighborhood for office space. There's more commercial spaces for rent in Bloomington than there is residential housing available, especially affordable housing in Bryant Park. So there's an equity issue for me in this. Also, as I said earlier, I'm a therapist in private practice. I run my own business and I rent an office downtown. There are lots of private practice therapists in Bloomington, lots of group practices like what Katie was talking about earlier. And every therapist I know would love to own their own office. You know, it's something that's particularly conducive to buying a home and converting it into an office. And so I'm concerned about passing this in the future implications that word will certainly get out that this house in Bryant Park is being used as a therapist office space, and paying around $200,000 for a house in a beautiful neighborhood and converting it into an office space is very desirable. I get why they would want to do this, and especially because commercial real estate is so expensive. And to me, it's a slippery slope that I imagine a lot of other private practice therapists will seek a similar setup. And to someone else's point, like Bryant Park is especially, I think, vulnerable to folks wanting to do that because of its location and the cost of the homes. And so I'm concerned about future implications and kind of changing the landscape and the way the neighborhood is put together, and not preserving the residential nature of the neighborhood. And in terms of that house being, used with the office space, that, attracting families to the neighborhood to live more permanently, I think how you attract families to the neighborhood to live more permanently is through accessible, affordable housing, not by converting an affordable house to an office space. And so, yeah, those are my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin, if you are online and would like to speak, you can unmute your microphone and state your name.
Thank you. Kevin McKees.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
You have up to 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. First, I live behind where they currently live now, on Dixie. And I walk to work, fortunate to do that, downtown, pretty much every day. I'm very familiar with the traffic in the area. I'm very familiar with the roads and the neighborhoods that have been described. And I have to say, as somebody who is on those roads for those reasons, I have no fears about the amount of traffic that they are talking about adding. My wife is a therapist. I know that the pace of the cars that would be coming in is much less than what I'm hearing people concerned about. So that just isn't a concern for me. I also am aware that I think it was in 2021, there was a survey that said that for every 10 graduates of school that are coming out to be new therapists, 13 are leaving. And I don't want to undersell that having a place where you can start to grow a business, and they're not talking about, regardless of whatever conversations happened earlier, this is being able to accommodate life changes, to be able to do so gradually, and to be able to start a business that, what I heard today was if it grows, that would be a different concern at a different location. So I support this. I think it's needed. I'm not concerned about a lot of the things that have been discussed here today, including some of the zoning things, which granted, I will admit, I don't know. If I had to go through this for something similar, I would have probably made, just as many mistakes in the reporting. What I heard today was two people who had a vision for something, got information and adjusted accordingly. And I think that should be considered as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brett, if you're online, you can unmute and state your name.
Yes, actually, it's Christine Earthart.
Do you affirm or swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
You have up to 5 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, thank you all so much for sharing. And I'm here, well, for two reasons. So I'm married to a psychotherapist and very well connected to the mental health community here in Bloomington, and I'm colleagues of Brant and Katie. And so just want to acknowledge their characters. I just find them to be extraordinarily considerate, compassionate, kind, caring, humble, gentle people, and amazing communicators. And I have such trust in their vision and how they would consider the greater good. I just watch them navigate many delicate life situations and have done so with such integrity. So just wanted to speak to that. And we've referred many people to Katie over the years as a therapist. She is a highly respected, sought after therapist. And the people that we've referred to her, I just wanted to speak to that in case people have concerns about maybe the kind of clientele who would be coming and going. These are professional, kind, respectful, quiet individuals who have been so deeply served by Katie's work. And I actually live outside city limits, and just thinking though of, again, just kind of knowing the ebb and flow of therapeutic practices. It's, much less than if you were to have maybe teenagers living next door and you had a few teenagers and their friends are coming and going. This is very kind of calculated, people just pulling in, parking, very quietly entering, quietly leaving. So they're not being loud music or parties. It's a very quiet, as I know people are well aware, but it's a very quiet profession, and there would almost be some level of guarantee, I would imagine, that things would stay quieter because of the population coming and going and the use, the partial use of the space. So I just wanted to share those things. So thank you so much for hearing that, and just wanted to show up in support of Katie and Brant and their amazing work they do in this world.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody online?
Last chance for anyone online to speak. Please raise your hand or comment. I don't see anyone.
Okay, so we're done with public comment, and we're going to go back to the board and see if we have any more questions after we heard the public comments. Any questions? You want to address?
There was a letter that was delivered to the neighbors. Do we have any idea what the context of that letter was? Okay.
Yes, we had some. There were some kind of wild rumors out there about starting group homes and having 6 or 7 employees. And so everyone on the block, I just wrote a handwritten letter to clarify, actually, this is the plan.
Be a group home.
Right, and that we were applying for this permit to have me and possibly 1 non-resident employee.
Quick question back to staff, I guess, given everything you've heard from the petitioners now, do you stand by the recommendation that you first made with this petition?
I personally do, yes.
Based on what we have to go on, which are the use-specific standards for home occupation within the UDO?
If 815 South Grant is truly used as both a residence and is shown to be their primary residence, and that is where the home occupation is operated out of, then, and they have one employee and then meet all of the other standards in the home occupation section, then yes, it could be approved in terms of it would be in line with code. whether or not it meets comprehensive plan goals and safety concerns, which are other criteria that we discuss in our findings, then that's a maybe. So I think for me personally, weighing affordable housing needs, residential character, the general desire of everyone on earth who would love to work from home. I would too. I would vote no because I'd like to maintain residential character in that area and maintain safety and quiet streets. So I feel for me personally that would weigh out. From a department standpoint, in terms of alignment with the code, it seems that they plan to do that by providing a homestead agreement and committing to one non-resident staff member. But the logistics of how that will work, how they will have their own personal cars in their driveway, along with the visitor cars, and not disrupt the residential character of the neighborhood, I'm not clear that that is as straightforward. Yep.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but obviously this has been very ambiguous. The presentation and things they're getting clarified, but we still have to, our decision and our purview is based on if there's a denial, then we have to override that with very substantial evidence, and that's just why I asked. So thank you.
So to staff again, I'll go back to that question. When you apply for a home occupation, did they apply with specific criteria, or did they change the criteria today? And that's what I'm a little hung up on, because if they told you something before, which was a dream, and maybe they didn't know, and they are exploring, it's okay. But we need, when you approve something like this, it can't be changed. And then if they decide to expand the business and they don't understand, and then they say later, oh, I don't understand what's going on, it can cause issues. So that's why I'm trying to figure out what was that they applied for today, but now they came and they are changing what they are thinking because they are learning what the law combine.
Yeah, I think that's a result. The confusion is perhaps a result of both of us going back and forth in terms of the initial proposal was, we're going to live in the house and operate this home business out of this home. Upon learning the residency requirements, they stated residency in the home for 3 months out of the year. Initially, I didn't object to that because the standard in the code doesn't define residency. It doesn't necessarily say 12 months out of the year. So there is some gray area there. And as a result of that, there's room to take advantage of that. So a lot of the interpretation of the code here is the intention behind the home occupation. While it doesn't say you can't own 2 houses and then run a home occupation out of one of them and not live in that home 12 months out of the year, it doesn't explicitly say that you can't do that. So it's a little bit of ambiguity upon, my interpretation of the code, my learning what the residents understood the code to mean, and how they tried to adjust the proposal to fit that requirement, and then my learning from some of the folks who wrote the code, what the actual intention of the code is in terms of residency and home occupation.
Full-time residency? Does it specifically say in the code, or it does not specify? But residency to me is if you're paying homestead, that's your primary residence.
Yeah, hold on a second. Yeah, sorry, there, that's what I was looking for. Okay, so the use-specific standard specifically states, operator residency required. The operator of the home occupation shall reside in the dwelling unit. And then a definition of home occupation, an activity or occupation carried on within a dwelling or approved residential structure by members of the family occupying the dwelling, and where the use of the home as an occupation is incidental and subordinate to the use of the home as a dwelling.
Thank you.
So I'll just add, where the UDO doesn't, where someone reading the UDO might not find that it's specific enough for them, we go to general definitions of something, right? So we would not, I think also the spirit of what a home occupation is supposed to be, just generally in basically all zoning codes, is that home is the primary use and then having the business is secondary. And so then when we discussed that internally, when we received the first actual application with 3 months, we just said, I don't think we can with a straight face say to anyone else, oh, this is their home. They're here a quarter of the year. And so, that may be something that we'll work with legal to clarify. Do we need to say primary residence? But I think that that's generally understood as a requirement. And so then that information was passed to them, and then that's why then they've now sought to change their homestead exemption and that type of thing. I think because we also identified a couple of other odd things in the report, like saying, oh, there will be parking in the driveway because the people who live in the property won't park there. And so it's like, well, if this is your house, why are you parking here? But I mean, it's because they own another property right around the corner, so they can use that. And code doesn't say they can't. You could park far away if you wanted to. It's just odd and atypical for us. So I think, especially in light of not having the homestead exemption information when the report was written, and then the general conditional use criteria that Katie mentioned related to adverse impacts, and that it was both of those things. It was the big issue was whether or not we felt this was actually going to be used as their primary dwelling unit, and then also were the adverse impacts that we were hearing about from neighbors and having some gray about from their own reports, going to be like, or were we going to be able to overcome those?
Well, thank you. I'm open to discussion to the board.
It says that they're going to be using 2 bedrooms that are already existing as the business operations.
There are 3 bedrooms in that house.
Are there 3?
3. I looked it up.
Okay, because online it says that there are 2. So I just didn't know, on the listing, the most recent listing, it said that there were 2.
2 bedrooms?
Yeah, and so I just am wondering how, if you're operating a personal business out of 2 bedrooms and 6 family members are occupied, I just don't see how that would work.
Sure, the public record says 3 bedrooms, but
From the photos online, from the most recent listing, there were only 2 included, but that could be different.
thank you for that observation. Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a very challenging petition, honestly, and I think we're kind of, the purview we have and what we're asked to do, we've kind of had to absorb things as you guys have, as staff has. And so, I think this is very well-intentioned, I really do. I think you guys are genuine. I think there's a desperate, desperate need for mental health services. I couldn't agree more with that. I think, though, there's a high level of ambiguity that isn't going, for me personally, to override the denial based on the adverse impacts and based on what staff has been given in terms of the report. And I think also this is, to me, where the public comes in. I think it's always very important. The public's always welcome at these meetings. Sometimes nobody shows up. It's great to have people because we really do value the public input and how this is going to, impact the people around in these neighborhoods. But I just think this is this needed to be a much stronger case and a lot less ambiguity to override the denial that's been set forth by staff.
I agree with what Tim said. Ultimately, we're being asked to make a decision based off of this petition and what's available, what information is available today, not tomorrow or next month. So maybe if it were at a different time, presented at a different time, and circumstances have been different, we could have justified changing that, but I just don't think it's there right now.
So we're going to have a few choices here. Denial will be one. Approval, as we have discussed, it will be difficult because we won't have findings to do. So the BZA works differently than any other commission. We cannot approve based on what we think. We have to follow what the UDO says, and we have to have clear facts to follow what the UDO, to reflect what the UDO says. So based on what we heard tonight, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to approve it. My other question for staff is, if we continue this, can they have the opportunity to rethink and think of what they really want to do here? I understand what they are thinking. I mean, in an ideal world, this is fantastic. Grandma stays in one house, we stay in the other house, we have the business. I mean, it's close by, we can walk. They have the right to own both buildings. You can own two houses, that's no problem. Everybody can own as many as they can afford. That's not the issue. The issue here has been the ambiguity of what this business is going to be, and I think you are growing into learning what this business is going to be. And home occupation is a business inside your home. You live there 100% of the time, and you happen to be a lawyer and work from one of the rooms or your dining room table, doesn't matter. What you're suggesting, or the beginning of what you were thinking, is bigger than just a home occupation business. So going back, sorry, I digressed. Going back to the continuation.
Okay, two things. I will answer your question, but they need the opportunity to use the rest of their 827 if they'd like. So I didn't put that on your outline, so we'll need to do that. But yes, you could continue the petition. I don't know, you all will have to decide, do you think there is like a resolution that can be met in the time of, our next meeting's in a month? If you do decide to deny it, just so everyone understands, if a zoning petition is disapproved by the board, it can't be heard again within 6 months unless the board adopts, votes unanimously to let it come back. So, so then in all cases involving a rehearing of a zoning petition previously disapproved, the board may require the petitioner to demonstrate material change in circumstances. So we've talked about this with other petitions where you've thought about denial and then wanting to come back, that one of the options is denying it, and then they can decide, are they able to change the petition to address some of the concerns, and then they can ask you if they can bring it back, or they can wait 6 months and come back. They can come back before the 6 months if you vote unanimously to let them put it back on the agenda. Otherwise, yes, you could continue it and see, if you feel like next month, if they're able to, they'll have closed on the house. Yeah.
The parking issue. So if they live full-time in a house, they own 2 cars, where is how are they going to provide? So it will be street parking for whoever's coming to the business. So we don't resolve the street parking situation.
Sorry. Yeah, right. I'm not sure.
Okay, so
Yeah.
here's another interesting idea. Why not make 408 Dodds the home occupation? Do you have more parking there? Nope. Okay. All right, so I guess what we have in mind here, so the petition as it is, has been presented to us today, we don't have a way to override it. So denial is in front of us, continuing to a next meeting or whenever it's in front of us, denying with the unanimous possibility of coming back. Is that what you're saying?
And then they would refile with us. We would put it on your agenda, and then
Oh, I
that
see.
night you would vote to let them be heard. And so
Again.
when you read the packet, if you were like, this doesn't address the issues, then you wouldn't have to let them rehear it. But after 6 months, then they would.
Then they
would have
they
to.
can come back anyway.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'll entertain a motion if you don't have.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I think you do have to give them the
Oh, yes.
opportunity to use the rest of their time.
Sorry. The petitioner, you still have the remaining time to speak, so if you'd like to speak, you are more than welcome to come back to the podium. You have 8 minutes and 27 seconds.
I'd love to speak to the parking clarification question. And I'd also, if it's possible, to ask about which parts of the current proposal are too ambiguous to decide on at the present moment. So to clarify the parking, we have 2 cars in our family, and we're planning to just park them on our driveway at the other house, 100 feet away, because we won't need to use both driveways. But then, yeah, my other question is if there are, it would help me to understand if there are specifics of the existing proposal that seem too ambiguous to decide on at present, or if there's anything that we can, is part of the issue that if there's something ambiguous in the written petition, but we're here clarifying it tonight, is that neither here nor there, because that's not the wording of the petition? Is that part of the challenge?
No.
This is your time for comment. These are rhetorical questions until the board, it goes back to the board so they can choose to answer your questions or not.
Yeah, you
Okay, well
can't
then-
ask us questions, we ask you questions.
Okay.
So, but you can raise the questions, and we might want to ask them if we feel like it.
Okay, sure. Then, yeah, I would love to raise that question because that would help me.
And then I wanted to clarify too, Brant and I do not work together. He works with Christine Earthhart, who spoke earlier, off-site. So his car would be gone during the work day and during the school day. And just to clarify too, any plans to expand would have to be in a commercial space because that's not what a home occupation means. And did you want to comment on this? I think we addressed. Yeah, so I think we addressed those things. Anything else? I guess one thing I do want to clarify is we are purchasing the home to make room for my mom, whether we acquire a home occupation or not. And so we are currently deciding, like, what does that look like for our family long term?
Are you satisfied with, you still have 6 minutes and 15 seconds. Are you satisfied with your comments? Okay, thank you.
Question about the ambiguity. I mean, I think, yeah, in terms of can we provide a homestead exemption form that proves our residency at 815 South Grant? Yes, they can. Do they say they're going to meet the one non-resident staff member? Yes. They meet the criteria, the UDO terms in terms of home occupation standards. However, we also evaluate proposals using conditional use criteria and general compliance criteria that are outlined in the UDO. And those criteria do include us considering adverse impacts, as well as consistency with comprehensive plan. So this is not just an evaluation of do they meet home occupation standards. We're taking into consideration adverse impacts that are predicted but also expressed by neighbors, and as well as comprehensive plan concerns which express a value for affordable housing for families and maintaining small residential areas. So that is what I think makes this proposal ambiguous. Also, the non-traditional nature of having the comfort of a second home nearby, wherein you have the space and the freedom to have a business in the home. The conditions of a home occupation are strict for a reason, and that portion of it does not necessarily. So the idea that a home occupation takes place in the same building as your primary residence, that would be another portion that is ambiguous, as they've expressed multiple times that they plan to expand into using the other home as needed for their residents. So there's a lot of reasons why this is ambiguous.
Thank you. Are you guys ready for extra comments, or I will be ready to entertain a motion?
I make a motion to deny CU-11-24/USE 2024-03-0042.
I'll second that.
Any comments?
I think just a comment on kind of the precedent this would set. I think there's a very slippery slope here. And I think in terms of what staff just kind of mentioned in terms of preservation of these core residential neighborhoods is very important. Having things as owner-occupied, housing is important. So, I again, appreciate the efforts of what you're trying to do. The intent is great. The intent is, again, like Flavia said, we voted on what we liked, but again, the purview for us is we have to look at if this sets a precedent, what are we going to deal with? Because we're on this board, all three of us, for several years to see more and more petitions come in like this. And my fear would be that if it's approved, the conditions that would be set, who's to say the next person that comes in wouldn't say, we're going to have, 15 cars trying to, not to say that would happen, but there's always that chance. And I think that's what we always have to take into consideration when we're making our, when we're voting on these things. And so that to me is just kind of why I think based on what staff was able to say more of, there's not enough there to kind of override where they're coming from on this. But again, appreciate it. And hopefully you can continue to do this work, which it sounds like you're going to, just in a different kind of setup.
I would like to say that the staff report was extensive, and it follows what the UDO says. The intention of what you have, it's still in motion and growing, and you're trying to figure out. I say if you find a way to do a home occupation in your own home, come back to us, okay, with more specific guidelines, and that follows what we're doing. There were several ambiguous things on the report, and also the unusual situation of having two homes, one by each other. And I know that you didn't mean to, but when you're trying to plan and figure out what you're doing, you think, oh, we can live here, and then we'll have the business here, or we'll have part of us here and mom there, or, I know that you're trying to figure that out. And I appreciate your honesty, appreciate you coming through and showing, appreciate your neighborhood involvement, talking to the neighbors, sending letters, and that's what we should do. It is your home. You should do, if you want to have a home occupation business, come back to us and with more specific guidelines that will follow what the ODO follow, and we will approve it. At this point, with what we have, denial is at the table, okay? So with that, I will ask for roll call, please.
Ballard. Yes. Burrell.
Yes.
Farrell.
Yes.
So the yes vote was a denial. So this petition was not granted. I wish you the best. Thank you. We are adjourned.